So imagine walking into your boss's office, right, and handing in a business plan where your entire profit margin depends on a $70 million government refund you haven't actually received yet. Because, well, actually, that is exactly what Under Armour just did for their fourth quarter. It is May 12th, 2026, and we are unpacking ticker UAA today on Earnings Unscripted.
It is a bold strategy. Let's call it that. Look, the numbers are, well, they are not pretty. Revenue came in at $1.17 billion. That is down 12% from last quarter. And gross margin got crushed. It dropped 240 basis points to 42%. So they are still actively losing money. Operating loss was $33.7 million. But, ironically, that is actually a massive improvement from the absolute bloodbath we saw in Q3.
Which says a lot about the baseline we're working with here. And just a quick sanity check before we really start dissecting their pain. Everything we say today is just our personal opinion for entertainment, so please don't take it as financial advice. But looking at the tape, the market was definitely not entertained. I mean, the stock took a brutal pre-market nosedive and ended up closing down almost 17% at around $5. So investors aren't exactly buying the turnaround story today.
They aren't buying it because the guidance is entirely built on faith. Like you said, that $70 million tariff refund is literally baking in 150 basis points of margin salvation for fiscal 2027. If Washington says no, the whole outlook crumbles. Plus, direct-to-consumer revenue just fell off a cliff, down over 37% sequentially. So they're bleeding from that high-margin channel while blaming tariffs and, strangely, a $35 million headwind from the Middle East for next year. It feels like they're throwing out a lot of excuses.
Okay, yes. The excuse list is long. But wait, did you catch the bit where the CFO was talking about his 23-year-old daughter? He basically had her try on one of their tops, and she was shocked by how good it was. She literally said, "Why don't you sell this?" And his whole takeaway from that was that they have a marketing problem, not a product problem. Which, I mean, is that a fair assessment?
Well, product without marketing is just expensive inventory. And right now they have $914 million of it sitting around in warehouses. Yes, that is down 15% sequentially, which shows they are aggressively cutting SKUs. I will give them credit for that. But if you have to rely on family members to validate your activewear appeal, you're losing the cultural relevance game, especially since they just quietly separated from the Curry brand, taking a $69 million termination hit to exit that contract. They're essentially losing their biggest cultural anchor.
That Curry detail is wild. It was just buried right there in the filings. So we have this shrinking brand trying to pivot to lifestyle gear while banking on a massive government check just to survive the year. Let's get into the details of how that actually looks under the hood.
Under the hood, it looks like a cash furnace. Look, management spent the whole call patting themselves on the back for narrowing the operating loss. And sure, a $33 million loss is a lot better than last quarter. But if you actually look at the cash from operations, it is a completely different story.
Different how? Because we just established their margins are compressing.
Right, but margins are just the P&L. I am talking about actual liquidity leaving the building. If you look at their 9-month statement back in December, operating cash flow was positive. Healthy, actually, like $257 million positive.
Okay.
But they ended the full fiscal year at negative $75 million. So the math on that means they burned through roughly $332 million of cash from operations in the fourth quarter alone, just 3 months.
Wow. So they burned $330 million while simultaneously shrinking the brand. I mean, inventory went down 15%, right?
Yes.
So where exactly is the cash going?
Restructuring, mostly, or at least the restructuring that never seems to end. They originally capped this fiscal 2025 turnaround plan at $255 million. Now they just quietly bumped the ceiling to $305 million and dragged the timeline all the way out to December 2026. Turnarounds are sticky. They almost always cost more than the initial spreadsheet says.
Classic sunk cost territory. But it begs the question of what they're actually turning around into. Like, what is the actual end goal here? Because Kevin Plank was pretty explicit on the call. He said, and I'm quoting this directly, "As we deploy the resources of time, people, and money, will this help us sell more premium shirts and shoes? That answer must be yes." Which, I mean, duh. Of course you want to sell more shirts.
Well, yes, making things people want to buy is generally a good business model. But the context here really matters. He is talking about pivoting away from pure sports-specific gear. They want to play in that everyday crossover space.
Oh, right, the Bouncy Tee.
The Bouncy cotton tee. Exactly. $65 for a t-shirt you can wear on a Friday night under a sport coat. Those were literally his words.
Wait, sorry. Who is wearing Under Armour under a sport coat? No offense to the brand, but if I'm going out on a Friday, I am not trying to look like I just finished a heavy lifting session and forgot my button down.
Look, I am not defending the fashion choice, but from a margin perspective, that is the Lululemon playbook. That is the Vuori playbook. They want that premium lifestyle pricing. But breaking into that market when you're known for aggressive performance fabrics, that requires insane marketing spend. And we already know they're trying not to buy unqualified web traffic right now. The CFO literally confirmed that on the call.
Right. He said they won't overinvest in performance marketing just to drive bad traffic. So they're starving the discount engine, which is a huge risk when you have this kind of identity crisis. You're trying to sell premium lifestyle tees while your direct-to-consumer channel is just cratering.
It is a control system running two conflicting programs. You want high margins, but you refuse to discount to clear out the legacy brand perception. Although I will give them credit for one thing, they are not totally asleep at the wheel financially.
How so?
They actually pre-funded their 2026 debt maturity. They took over $600 million in cash and locked it up as restricted investments purely to pay off their senior notes due next year. So that maturity risk is just completely neutralized.
So they put the cash in escrow, basically.
Precisely. It shows they know exactly how vulnerable they are operationally right now, so they're locking down the balance sheet before any real storms hit. It's actually a very elegant piece of corporate finance.
Okay, so that is a really smart defensive move. It gives them a buffer. But you still have this massive cash burn in Q4, this extending turnaround timeline, and an entirely new strategy pinning its hopes on premium Friday night t-shirts and tariffs. It really forces us to step back and look at the whole board. So where does this leave them heading into next quarter?
Well, it leaves them holding their breath and waiting for a check from the government. I mean, literally. Management is guiding to this big gross margin jump for the year, somewhere around 220 to 270 basis points. But a huge chunk of that, about 150 basis points, relies completely on them actually receiving that $70 million tariff refund.
Wait, so if Washington just, drags its feet or rejects it, their entire profitability narrative for fiscal 2027 just evaporates?
Precisely. The CFO basically admitted if you back out the refund, the actual margin benefit is only like 70 to 120 bips. So next quarter is going to look completely bizarre.
Bizarre how? Like bad bizarre or just accounting bizarre?
A bit of both, honestly. Q1 revenue is forecast to be the weakest of the entire year, down maybe 2 or 3%. But because they expect to book that massive tariff refund right away, the gross margin is going to optically rocket up over 600 basis points.
Okay, yeah, it is a funhouse mirror. You kind of can't trust what you are looking at.
No, you can't. And to complicate things further, they have these tax valuation allowances playing havoc with the P&L. It traps their international tax benefits. So moving forward, their GAAP tax rate is going to be unusually high. You will not even be able to cleanly compare their net income to past cycles without a headache.
So if we step back, the broader trajectory is a shrinking athletic brand, banking heavily on a single government refund, trying to sell Friday night lifestyle shirts while locking up cash to cover debt. It feels less like a comeback and more like, I don't know, a holding pattern?
It is. It's a stabilization year. They stopped the major bleeding, but they're still very much in the ICU.
Well, on that highly optimistic medical note, I think we have definitely squeezed all the insight out of this report.
Let's hope their $65 Bouncy Tee is comfortable. They're probably going to be wearing it in the waiting room for a while.
Very true. All right. Thank you for listening, everyone. Catch you after the next call.
Goodbye. And
So, if you want these earnings drops to just show up for you automatically, go ahead and follow the show. And just as a quick aside, we do use AI to help generate these episodes, which is honestly how we managed to pull those exact transcript quotes so quickly. We'd also love to hear what tickers you want us to dig into next. So drop us a line at earningsunscripted@datamadness.ca or just grab the X link in the show notes.
catch you later.